I just filmed, I was into my second book talking about it and realized I wasn't recording. I've had coffee, I promise. God, that's so annoying. Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today I wanted to do this video where I am going to be highlighting some books that I have added onto my wish list because of the Currently Reading podcast. This was kind of inspired by our most recent round of 5-star predictions that we're currently in the middle of, where we are partnering, Lindsay and I are partnering with our friend Lori, and we are reading books that we heard about on podcasts. And I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that because I did show my 5-star predictions, and I'm reading those because of the Currently Reading podcast, which is the main book podcast that I listen to. I have a couple others that I kind of dip in and out of, but this one is like every Monday I am listening to this podcast because I love it. And I am even on their Patreon, so I get a little bit of extra content. So I usually have 1 to 2 podcast episodes to listen to every single week. So I just dive in and I love it. I love their recommendations. I love their friendship and their banter and the way they talk about books. You guys, they get me to pick up books and it's a little dangerous, but I add quite a bit onto my wish list as I'm listening to them. And even just this morning, I added 2, and that kind of made me go, you know what, I need to do a video about, kind of a little bit more about the books that this podcast in particular is getting me to pick up and read. So if you haven't listened to the Currently Reading podcast, I will leave them linked down below, but you can find them in Apple, Spotify, like wherever you listen to podcasts, they're going to be there, and it's fantastic. And their Patreon is also phenomenal. So, but their podcast is free, obviously, so listen away. But I will leave them linked down below, and I will go ahead and leave my 5-star predictions video down below too, so you can see the 3 that I'm currently reading. And I'm going to talk about some books. I'm just going to go through my Amazon wish list real quick and point out the ones that I have added because of hearing them talk about it. Some of them are going to be books I've never heard of before. I heard them talk about it. Some of them are going to be books that I have heard of before, but they got me to actually want to read them. Okay, so the first one is one that I heard about this morning. I had never heard of this book before. It is called Mouth to Mouth. This is by Antoine Wilson. And this is a short book. And it was pitched as kind of a hoity-toity, rich people doing bad things type of book. And it was compared to The Talented Mr. Ripley, which I have not read or seen, but I know the storyline of it. So in this one, number one, the cover is awesome. And the premise of it sounds really good. So we are following 2 men. They have an encounter where one of them saves the other one's life. And from there, an obsession begins. But along the way, weird things are happening involving both of them. And you're kind of seeing the dynamic between them and what's actually happening here. And apparently it gets crazy off the rails. And that sounds like a lot of fun in such a short amount of time. So, but the way they talked about this was just made me want to get it, so I added it. Another one is Annihilation. This is by Jeff Vandermeer. Now, I have been interested in Jeff Vandermeer as an author for quite a while. He writes science fiction, and I hear it's very weird. I'm down. I just haven't picked anything of his up yet. I don't own anything, but I have definitely heard of and seen Annihilation around quite a bit. It's a trilogy, and they're short books. They're not like big, huge book. So it's not a huge commitment. But I think Annihilation would be a good place for me to start because it does have an adaptation. There's a movie adaptation of it. And the premise just sounds right up my alley. So we're following a group of people who are sent to do some research or investigation into this place called X, where either weird things are happening or people are disappearing. I don't know exactly what, but it just follows that whole thing, and it's supposed to get really weird. And I'm very interested. I'm very, very interested. They don't talk a whole lot about sci-fi on the podcast. They're starting to get a little bit more into it, but they both absolutely loved this one. And it really it made me want to pick it up. Okay, this next one is Cover Story by Susan Rigetti. Now, this is one that I have seen quite a bit. I've heard it talked about quite a bit. And the way that Meredith in particular described this book it just made me want to go out and get it. And it seems like it's a big, huge drama fest, just kind of like going off the rails type thing. And I believe it involves a famous person, like the main character is someone of fame. I don't know exactly what. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I have heard really good things about this book. And whenever I hear people talk about it, they say that they really like it a lot. And Meredith absolutely loved it. So yeah, I'm definitely interested. I want to say I had it on my wish list before, and then I took it off, and then she made me put it back on. I was like, okay, I need to read this book. And it's definitely one that has been recommended to me personally as well. So it's on there now. Okay, the next one is The Violin Conspiracy. This is by Brendan Slocum, and this is a historical book. This one follows a young boy who is a violin prodigy, and he is entering into this huge big world famous competition. It's a big deal. He has this violin that he plays on that has a very famous history to it. It's worth a lot of money. And right before he's supposed to go out and perform, his violin gets stolen and it goes from there. I first heard about it on the podcast. Since then, a lot of people have been talking about it. Brendan Slocum actually is a local author to me. To the point where he knows my daughter's violin instructor at school. So, like they've played together before and stuff. So when this book came out, she was talking about it to her classes. And so Kaylin came home and was like, I heard about this book and blah, blah, blah. My teacher knows the author and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I want to read that book. That's on my wish list. So that was really cool. Yeah, but that's definitely on my list. And they definitely got me wanting to read this book. Okay, the next one I have on here is Sorrowland. This is by River Solomon. This is a book that I had heard of before, but I didn't really know a whole lot about it. The cover is gorgeous. But the way that they were talking about it and just gushing about it and still gush about it, they still bring it up every so often, really made me interested in it. And I don't fully remember the premise. I know it has something to do with water. There's some sort of like water situation happening. I don't know if it takes place underwater or if someone gets transported underwater and there's something happening down there. I don't fully remember, but it was enough that I added it to my wish list. Okay, next one is Portrait of a Thief. This is by Grace D. Lee. And this one, I had seen the cover before, but I didn't know anything about it. But Meredith is the one, I believe, who was talking about this one. And she reads a lot of thrillers, a lot of police procedural, that kind of stuff. She reads a lot like that. And this is one that she just completely gushed about. And the way that she was talking about it got me so intrigued. And I was like, I remember thinking to myself when I was listening to her, I was like, I didn't know that all that was going to be in there. That sounds really cool. So I added it to my wish list. Okay, another one is The Displacements by Bruce Holsinger. And this one I actually had gotten from the library at one point, and then I had to take it back because I don't read my library books. I check them out, I bring them home. I have 5 million books in my house, and then I take them back. So whole thing. But this one is a weather-related book where there is a hurricane, but it's greater than I think it's like greater than a Category 5 from what I'm remembering. I feel like that is where things have come to a point where there's greater than Category 5 hurricanes. And so this takes place in Florida. And I believe the storm is strong enough to actually physically move people to a different location from what I'm remembering. And it's like a whole family drama trying to figure out like where they are and what's going on and all that. But yeah, it sounded really good. And then we have the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. John Scalzi is another author that I'm definitely interested in. He writes science fiction. This is no different. Okay, so this one takes place during COVID-19. And we are following a man who is, I think, looking for work, as many people were. And he ends up answering a call for animal care, like caring for animals. Cool. I can do that. So he gets this job. What he's not told is that the animals that he's going to be caring for are not on Earth. It's in an alternate world. And so he actually, like, I'm guessing it's a portal fantasy where he has to travel to another world in order to care for these animals. But doing that and what happens in this area could cause a lot of damage to the Earth itself in his time. So it's like, I don't know. I'm very interested in this. It sounds so good. Another short one, but it sounds like it's going to be completely action-packed, and I definitely want to read John Scalzi. Okay, another one is Fantastic Land. This is my Mike Bakoven. This one I have been on the hunt for, and I'm telling you, I have a hard time finding it anywhere but Amazon. Like, I can't find it in the stores. I've never seen it in the stores before. It's just hard for me to actually like physically see it anywhere unless I just order it from Amazon, which is why it's on my wish list. But this one, okay, has been, it's inspired by Lord of the Flies. I read Lord of the Flies. I didn't love it because for me, there wasn't enough death. I was expecting more death based on everything I'd heard about that book. I was expecting more children to die. So I was a little disappointed that there wasn't more death of the children. It's fine, guys. I promise I'm okay. But then I had heard about this one, and I believe I even heard Meredith say, this is what I wish Lord of the Flies had been. I was like, oh, I'm listening. And then when I did talk about Lord of the Flies, a lot of people recommended this one to me as well. So that was really cool. So this one is a case where there is a theme park, and there's a bunch of teenagers, I believe, that work at this theme park, and something happens and the theme park has to shut down, and it's like an isolated thing. They can't get away. They can't leave. It's not safe, all that kind of stuff. Something happens inside this theme park, and they're like left to their own devices, and it kind of goes from there, and they have to go into survival mode. So I've heard this one is insane, and I need it. Okay, guys, those are some of the books that I have added onto my wish list because of hearing about them on the Currently Reading podcast. So that was a lot of fun. I will leave a link to their podcast down below. So make sure you go check them out if you have not already. I just love them. I think they're fantastic. And I will also leave a link to my wish list down below if you guys want to see everything else that's on there, or if you want to get more information about the books that are on there. Just scroll through my list to find the one that you are looking for, and you can click on that and see what these books are all about and see if you're interested in them as well. And I will talk to you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.